Hello and welcome to SweetSpotDFS. This is a DFS review for the 2021 Valspar Championship where Sam Burns is your winner. But before we actually get into that video, I want to remind you guys there are timestamps in the description below. Those timestamps can also be found on YouTube's progress bar. So if you are on desktop, all you gotta do is hover your mouse over that progress bar. It'll show you the timestamps that way. On mobile, you're gonna have to click and drag your finger up and down that progress bar to see them. So they're at your disposal. Use them as you wish. All right, let's get into this. I'm going to pull up the results page up right away. And Sam Burns wins at 17 under. It was a close match between him and Keegan. I mean, it was basically a two-man race for this entire tournament until like hole 13, maybe 14. I can't remember, but Keegan Bradley ends up putting it in the water on his approach shot to the green. Ends up making double bogey. I can't remember what hole to save the life of me, but either way, it doesn't matter. Keegan kind of choked this one away, missed a couple really short putts, like 4 to 5 feet, and missed bad, like didn't even touch the hole, which this is what Keegan Bradley's known for. So something that we basically, it didn't surprise us, let's put it that way. But Burns, he did not step off of the gas pedal. He finished this tournament very strong. It was very impressive. Good for Sam Burns. He finally gets his first victory. He's been knocking on the door, and he's been really close in a lot of his tournaments. So nice to see Sam Burns winning this tournament. Some surprises. I guess they not so much surprises. To me, they kind of are, but not really. Max Homa being inside the top 10. I basically collect my own stats, and Homa this year has been pretty decent on Bermuda tracks, but collectively, overall for his entire career, he hasn't been very good on Bermuda. So I think, I can't remember where his first decent finish, I think it was like the Workday Championship, the WGC event. But like that is a limited field, so I don't necessarily count that as any significance. But either way, Homa kind of was a surprise to me. Nobody else on that leaderboard, though, was that much of a surprise. Like Victor Hovland finishing top 5, top 10, kind of thought, Victor Hovland had a good shot. I kind of went in a different route for the 10K golfers, because obviously that's what he was on DraftKings. But yeah, it was a pretty good leaderboard. This was a very good tournament. It was nice to see Burns win. And I will also say this. I didn't see much of the tournament Saturday, so I have no idea what the narratives were on Saturday, but I saw a good chunk of it Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. I thought it was a fun tournament. My biggest disappointment was Charlie Hoffman. He could have won me a lot of money this weekend, but ended up going the wrong direction during this last round. And I think most of it came in the back nine, so it was a big disappointment. Had he like top 10, I probably would have made my money back plus some. Unfortunately, put in 40 this week and came out with 15, I think. So not good. But anyways, let's move on to the, so actually I entered the $5 GPP. I was going to say the $1 GPP. This is where we're going to compare the GPP winning lineup versus the optimal lineup. I do have it sorted by DraftKings points, but let me go ahead and give you what it looks like, top down on the leaderboard. So obviously Sam Burns, you can see all the way down. But if we go ahead and sort by DraftKings points, you can see it kind of changes a little bit. But the $5 GPP winning lineup had Sam Burns, Keegan Bradley, Victor Hovland here as well. I'm going to push it back to this because I want to show you how many top 10 golfers were in this lineup. So Sam Burns, Keegan Bradley, Victor Hovland, Max Homa. So the GPP winning lineup had 4 top 10 golfers. And obviously, here at SweetSpotDFS, we are analyzing the top 10 every single week for every single tournament, trying to determine, trends or common plays, that kind of stuff, to try to figure out how this optimal lineup is going to shake down. GPP winning lineup, only 4. We usually see around 5, but this week, just 4. Bubba Watson was in that GPP winning lineup, and he finished 13th, so not too far off of 10th place. And then we scroll down a little bit, and we get to Scott Stallings. He finished 29th. Overall, that GPP winning lineup scored 595.5 points. if I go ahead and sort by DK points, this way you can see that if we try to find 6 golfers here at the top that are under $50,000, that's obviously how we're going to get to our optimal lineup. And the top 6 guys can fit. Used up 49,100, scored a total of 654.5 points. So that's about a 50 point, it's almost a 60 point difference. Yeah, it's 59 point difference between the GPP winning lineup and the optimal lineup. And it consisted of Sam Burns, Keegan Bradley, Victor Hovland, Cameron Tringali, Vaughn Taylor, I know you guys all saw that, and Max Homa. So those 6 golfers made your optimal lineup. But obviously, when we try to figure out what that optimal lineup is, we follow the bucket system and see how that bucket system can come to life in this optimal lineup. And usually during these review videos, I don't do a very good job of going right to that. So let's go ahead and jump into that. So the biggest thing that I talked about was I was trying to find recent form 4 golfers, recent form 2 golfers, and course history 4 golfers, wherever those guys are. So those 3 buckets, and I know it might be a little busy on the screen for you, but as long as you just follow over the highlighted cells, these are the buckets I'm talking about. So we're looking at, again, course history bucket 4, which is this one right here. And then the 2 recent form buckets, 4 and 2. And you can see what they kind of make up. It's basically your best course history and your best recent form. So the number 1 group that I was looking at was recent form 4 because it had the highest success rate. So this column right here had the highest success rate of finishing inside the top 10. So when it looks at every golfer that fit in this bucket dating back to 2013, it shows it has the greatest success rate. We've seen 7 total, but here's the biggest thing that I kind of failed, and I'm kind of foreshadowing. We didn't see one of these golfers inside the top 10, but we already kind of knew that risk. We had 0 as the minimum, meaning there were at least one, or there was a year or maybe a couple years where we didn't see a single one from this bucket inside the top 10, meaning it's not a for sure shot. It's not a surefire thing. We didn't see it, but I will say this, that Charlie Hoffman guy I was talking about earlier, had he not failed miserably during Sunday's round towards the back 9 and say he, instead of bogeying, just parred the holes that he did on the backside, he would have been inside the top 10. So it would have worked out. Charlie Hoffman was the closest guy, but we'll get to that. But yeah, I mean, I guess let's go ahead and just look right in at the 2021 DK page where we have all of our buckets right here and our top 10 values. Now we can go ahead and sort this by DraftKings points, but I'm just going to keep it to top 10 because I only really look at top 10. So let's go ahead and do that. Thankfully, you needed all 6 of your guys to be inside the top 10 to get the optimal lineup, which again, we typically see every single tournament, every single year. That's also not a surefire thing. I want to make that known because I don't think I ever discussed that. There have been times where the optimal lineup had somebody who was 11th, 12th, or 13th place as that 6th golfer. But more times than not, you need all 6 inside the top 10 to get that optimal lineup. But here, we obviously had 6 golfers. If we try to follow that logic that I use, like we want to find recent form 4s. Well, we don't see one. So that was a fail. That was the first failure. That kind of stunk. The next one was to find a recent form 2. And thankfully, there were several of them. There were 4 of them. Keegan Bradley being one of them. And if you were watching the strategy video, he showed up in the optimal lineup a lot. Like the optimizer lineup, I should say. So I don't want to mix those two things up. I always call what the optimizer spits out as the optimal lineup. It's just based off of my metric what the optimal lineup would be. So obviously the metric needs to change somehow to get a little bit more accurate, but Keegan Bradley and Sam Burns showed up. I swear to God, go and check out the strategy video. Those 2 guys were always in the lineups. Whenever I, changed it up a little bit, they kept showing up. So they were obviously really good values. You can see what my rank was for each of them, 2130. But yeah, Keegan Bradley was basically one of the top guys of that recent form bucket too. But you can see Abram Answer was there as well. He was the thumbnail of the strategy video. He was one of my favorite plays. Abram Answer was there, but he was not in the optimal lineup. One of the other things I want to discuss is following the optimal lineup or the bucket system, I should say. I'm sorry. Let's reverse that. Following the bucket system should still get you a win against a GPP winning lineup. And that's the other thing that I'm going to try to convey in these review videos, because obviously I want to hold myself accountable. I want you guys to know the system works. So that's obvious. That's why I'm going to be sharing the things I do. But yeah, we have 4 recent form bucket 2 golfers. 3 of them were in the 9K range. And if you remember me talking about the salary portion of the preview video, to me, I wanted to focus my lineups around 2 9K golfers, because we saw that in the optimal lineup a bunch of times. Obviously, I'm sad to say, but there were no 9K golfers in the optimal lineup. But there are obviously 9K golfers inside the top 10, so that stat is still going to show up when we look at this the bucket system next year for this tournament. There are 3 golfers that are in the 9K range, or that are 9K. That fit inside the top 10. So it's still going to match. It's just not going to be the optimal lineup for this year. So recent form 2, perfect. The other thing we were looking at were course history 4 golfers. We see 1. And I mean, that's all we were really looking for, was just 1 guy. The projected outcome was 1 for this bucket, as you can see. So if I were to go like that, cross-reference it, 1 is what I thought. And again, if you're in the strategy video or the preview video, I had said the exact same thing. So we do have that this year. Again, Abram Answer was not in the optimal lineup. But we can probably make a lineup, and that's what I'm going to do here shortly. We can make a lineup with the guys here inside the top 10 that fit that bucket system conditionals, basically, to beat a GPP winning lineup. So we'll definitely take a look shortly, but I just want to keep going with this summary. So course history 4, recent form 2, and recent form 1. Those were the 3 buckets I highlighted in, I think, both of my videos. I know for sure the strategy video. I didn't really go into any other ones because they were really the easy ones to choose from. Oh, I'm looking at recent form 1. That's not what I want. Recent form 4. There we go. They were the easy ones to go by, primarily because their bucket totals were really small for this year, and that's just easier to go by. So obviously we looked at 6 golfers from course history 4, we looked at 5 from recent form 4, and we did look at 27 from recent form 2. But I didn't feel like going through all the other buckets just to show you, my favorite plays, because that would have taken forever if we're being honest. And I do like to talk. Obviously, these videos are pretty long. So I didn't talk about all of them, but if we go ahead and we look at our minimums here, because this is the thing that I usually like to look at every single tournament. Minimums mean since 2013, we have seen this bucket inside the top 10 a minimum of that many times. So whatever you see on the screen, obviously we see 1s for a bunch of them. So we see last week 1, course history 3, course history 5, course history 2, course history 1, recent form 2, and recent form 1. So this is also kind of letting us know, find golfers from these buckets and play them. There's obviously risk that comes with it. Nothing is exactly 100%, but let's go ahead and review each of these buckets. And let's start with the last week 1s. Did we see that inside the top 10? Short answer, yes. We saw it twice. Abram Answer and Joaquin Niemann. So Answer's just a brilliant play for the mere fact he takes care of a last week bucket 1, a recent form bucket 2, and a course history bucket 4. So just those 3 buckets alone, he was fantastic. Let's go ahead, go back. So we can cross this one off. Let's just highlight it just for this video. That one checks. Let's make it green. We'll mark it red if it doesn't. Trying to find a good green color. That's fine. Course history bucket 3. Let's go ahead and look. Do we see one of those golfers? Course history bucket 3. We see it a few times. Cameron Tringali, Vaughn Taylor, and Louis Oosthuizen. And just to remind you guys, the range here is your description of what that bucket is. So these are golfers that fell under the 40 to 60 recent form average, which obviously means their average finishing position at this tournament. It fell somewhere between 40th and 60th place. So we saw one. That's a check. Or we saw three. I'm sorry. We saw at least one. Course history bucket 5. Now it's ranked 5 because it has a lower frequency than some of the other buckets. Does that show up? It had a minimum of 1. Yes, it does. It showed up twice. We have Keegan Bradley. So Keegan Bradley fits that course history bucket 5 and recent form bucket 2. So obviously that's an easy cross off the list. Troy Merritt is the other guy. And I mean, Troy Merritt was not on my radar. I was not choosing him. I don't like his strokes gained bucket score. I don't like any 5s typically. And if I do, I only play 1. I only allow the optimizer to select 1 strokes gained bucket 5 golfer. So obviously I would have missed out on any of these 2 guys here unless their bucket score was good. And you can see, so their sweet spot score was good. And they really weren't. But either way, we can go ahead and give that a check. So we'll go ahead, make that one green. Course history bucket 2. How about this? We'll look at course history bucket 2 and course history bucket 1. We'll make this faster. So course history bucket 1, yes, there was 1. Course history bucket 2, there was 1. So that fits the mold as well. Victor Hovland, obviously a good play. Max Homa, that was another good play. So those also check the box. And those were probably easy to get to, right? I mean, Homa and Hovland out of that group, there were 25 golfers in course history bucket 2, 33 into course history bucket 1. It's probably difficult to choose from, but those 2 names aren't that hard to choose from. You know, they're good golfers, and relatively hot, like as in how well they've been playing. So yeah, probably not hard to get there. And then the other 2 we saw, I mean, we already know recent form bucket 2 showed up, so we can go ahead and cross that off. How about recent form bucket 1? Now we've seen a minimum of 2. So it's kind of a little larger than the ones that we just previously went over. Do we see at least 2? Recent form bucket 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we see 4. Which obviously that's a huge success. So all of these minimum buckets just hit. And if we were going by this, now again, there's usually a risk that comes with this. Not everything is 100%, but we have seen over the last 6, 7, 8 years that there have at least been 1 golfer who is in that last week bucket 1 in all these course history buckets right here, and then 1 and 2 in these recent form buckets. If we use the optimizer and put those constraints on and only select lineups with, you know, a minimum of these in there and then just fill in the rest, we probably would have gotten on most of these guys. Can't tell you the optimizer is going to give you the optimal lineup, but still, it turned out pretty well. And can we create a lineup with any of these guys that would have fit? So Aram Answer was one of them. So let's go ahead and just mark him at 93. Keegan Bradley was another. Recent form bucket 1 with Sam Burns. We can certainly do that. No problem. I mean, Vaughn Taylor was a course history bucket 3. So we can use him and just say whatever. He's just a filler. We could probably do Victor Hovland, but this puts us right at 41,900. So we need someone 8K or lower, and really Max Homa fits that mold. So like that's 50,000 on the button. We could have made this lineup. How many points would it have scored? Let's see here. I'll just highlight this and use the little function down here. 638.5 points. The GPP winning lineup, if you remember from that $5 Drive the Green contest, scored 595. So we would beat it by 40 points. So just following the bucket system, lineups with the guys that you see in the top 10 would have gotten us there pretty easily. So bucket system was a success. I mean, it was 100%. It didn't get to the optimal lineup, but it got really damn close to the optimal lineup. I think we were off 8 points, 7 points. So I like to sometimes. Here's the thing. This is why I'm going to give it a 100% success. 49,100 is difficult. Well, it's not that difficult, but a lot of times we'll see an optimal lineup at 47,000, 48,000 something. And I always say this whenever I go through it like this. That's incredibly difficult to create a lineup that way. Even if you're following the bucket system rules, you are allowing so many more different combination of lineups to happen. And just think about it. If we say you need $50,000, at least 50,000, you can't put a lineup of, you can't put a lineup of, let's put it a different way. I'm trying to think off the top of my head how to do math, basically. But if we were to get 6 golfers and say they average $8,000, no. Yeah, let's use 8,000 because that is that's doable. It's gonna work in my example. So let me go ahead, bring up this page because it's gonna be a little simpler to do it here. We'll look at everybody, and then we will sort by salary from top down, and say DraftKings allows you 8,300 per player, so we could grab these 6 golfers right here. 3, 6, yeah. Nope, that's 50,100. Can't do that. These golfers right here. So this equals 49,500. So the 6 golfers you see right here, that's pretty good. 49,500, that's easy to get to. But if we were to move down just a little bit, so we start at 8,100 and go down to to 7,800, those 6 golfers combined equal 47,700. So when you think of an optimal lineup this way, here's one variable that you can do. I know I can't really show this as well, but if we take that guy out and put that guy in, that's another combination. Take that guy out, put that guy in, it's another combination. And I can do that going all the way down the list by just substituting Kevin Streelman with some of these guys. And same goes with here. You grab any of these guys and you select all of them. There are going to be more combinations of golfers you can do from this point down than you can, say, grabbing one of these guys up here. Your combinations are so limited, and not so limited. They're just much more limited. So if I go 11-5, 9-6, 8-5, 7-6, I have around $13,000 I can live with or I can play with. That's $6,500 on average, right? Did I do my math right? So if I grab a 7K golfer, yeah, we can't do that. So we have to come down to 67, and this leaves me with $6,100 left I can play with. So you can see my options to create lineups. If I start with an 11K golfer, go to 9, go to 8, go to 7, limit me. I have to select 2 golfers around $6,500. And obviously around $6,500, that is just a select few golfers down here. I know it's more than a few, but the combinations are so much less building lineups that way. Because obviously I just showed you, if we start here and we substitute this guy and go all the way down, you can do that endlessly almost. But then you can do that for all 6 golfers. And that means your lineups that you can create just become that much more. So long story short, what I'm trying to do is limit the amount of lineups you can actually create by saying, let's get it as close to $50,000 as possible. I used to be the type that would say, let's leave money on the table because we've seen it every single year. An optimal lineup leaves money on the table. I'm telling you right now, let's make things easier. I still want to follow the bucket system, but I also want to make lineups easier to create. I want there to be less combinations to get there, and I still want to be able to beat the GPP winning lineup. So although I'm still seeking the optimal lineup, I'm living somewhere between the optimal lineup and still taking down a GPP. And to do that, there are some compromises that need to be made. So I can't chase, the optimal lineup completely, because in doing that, I'm going to have to allow for all the different lineup combinations you can possibly do, basically down to $45,000, like leaving $5,000 on the table. I could create thousands of lineups and still not get through every combination. Especially, well, I shouldn't say thousands. Well, yeah, we probably could do thousands even with the bucket system rules. Because if we look at that summary again, if we take all of these that hit, look at how many golfers are in each one of those buckets. There's 27 in recent form 2. There's 46 in recent form 1. 46. That means, like, just take out any one of those golfers and replace them. So 46 times just with that. But then you have to multiply it by the 27. Look at the 33 in this bucket. Sometimes they cross over, don't get me wrong. But you can see how some of these buckets are so large, like 52 in the last week 1 bucket. You combine that with the recent form 1 bucket as well, and you just do the math on that. I mean, I can't, like, just the crude math would be something like 50 times 45. And that's just how many lineups you can create out of those 2 buckets. If you don't put a salary constraint in there. But if you do put a salary constraint in there saying we need our lineups to be over $49,000 at least, that will eliminate a lot of lineups. So it's not, I know some of you guys really enjoy the fact that I chase the optimal lineup, and the fact that in order to find that optimal lineup, we need to consider everything in place, like leaving $3,000 on the table. But I think for as long as I've done this, that might be one of the more foolish ones to actually try to follow. There's way more win equity in the guys that are more expensive, and obviously their chance of winning is much higher. So if we were to look at everybody that was inside the top 10 once more, like, can we build a lineup that takes down a GPP winning lineup with the 6K guys here, followed by, let's say, these guys? This is 45,100. That's what this equals right here. If I highlight over this, that's 629 points. So yeah, we can win a GPP with this. And if this was the optimal line, I mean, it was 1 golfer away. Troy Merritt, obviously he didn't score as much as Victor Hovland. He was 20 points behind, but 5 of the 6 golfers were in that optimal lineup that were the cheap ones right here. So if I were to consider lineups around 55,100, these 2 golfers just in the 6K range, like, let's go to the salary summary. No, that's not going to be a good one. We'll keep it here at the DK page. If I were to include everyone once again, and it's already sorted by salary top to bottom, if I highlight over the 6K range, scroll all the way down, we have 96 golfers in the 6K range alone. So that's everybody under 7,000. 96. The field's 156 people deep. So this is more than half. It's almost 2/3. It's pretty darn close to 2/3 of the lineup is in that 6K range. Think of how many combinations of lineups you can create. I know I've been going on this for a while now, but I just want to reiterate, if you haven't been with me before, or if you didn't catch it before, I want you guys to know the chase for the optimal lineup is still there, but it's really not considering, trying to leave a lot of money on the table. When I do look at salaries, I'm still analyzing all the salaries that finish inside the top 10, as well as the top 5 and top 20. And this spreadsheet is actually going to change a little bit. I'm going to include it in the summary page. So it will be here. We'll be exclusively looking at every bucket through this. But yeah, for salaries, the analysis is still there for top 10s, and finding the optimal lineup will still be there. But we're also trying to find the most realistic optimal lineup. I think that's probably the best way to say what I'm still hunting for, what I'm still searching for, is the realistic optimal lineup. So there can be the optimal lineup, which can score or which can use $45,000, $46,000, $47,000 of the salary, but the realistic lineup is going to be over $49,000, if that makes sense. So hopefully you followed that, and I didn't bore your ear off with all of that, but that's what I'm searching for. Let me go ahead. I want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Usually I think what I'll go from here is to top 20 stats. I think that's probably the best way to do this. Oh, the last thing actually that I want to discuss about the bucket system is looking at the strokes gained buckets. So I actually did not fill this in. I don't have it by results, unfortunately, but what I can say, what we can do is look at the 2021 DK page, look at the top 10, and check the strokes gained buckets here. Basically, let's go back to this page. I'm using these rules up here. Pick 1 to 3 strokes gained bucket 1, 1 to 3 strokes gained bucket 2, 1 to 3 strokes gained bucket 3. You can see what all the rules are up here. I'm not going to go over every single one of them. But as you can see, or when we go back to the 2021 DK page, strokes gained bucket 1 golfers rule the nest, basically. So we have 6 total guys. And when we look at strokes gained buckets, if we highlight all of them, there are only 14. So nearly half of the guys inside this strokes gained bucket finished inside the top 10, which is pretty remarkable. Like, that's really cool. When we look at strokes gained bucket 2, there's 1. Strokes gained bucket 3, there's 1. We see 0 strokes gained bucket 4s inside the top 10, which is really surprising. We do see a couple 5s, and I'm not too concerned about that. But again, how I usually say this, we don't see any 6s. No strokes gained bucket 6 golfers. And if we take a look at the strokes gained bucket 6 golfers, they're all right here. None of them were really notable. I mean, Sam Horsfield and Rasmus Højgaard, those were probably the only notable ones because they're really good European golfers. But other than that, I mean, nobody else. We're not really selecting anybody else. You can see what their sweet spot score was not good. When we take a look, this is probably one of the more, I don't want to say normal. This is a little surprising to me because, yeah, we do usually see strokes gained bucket 1 guys inside the top 10. It is your best stat. Everything is positive. And I can go ahead and confirm that by scrolling over here, looking at the season-long baseline stats. And you can see when you scroll over all of it, all of their stats, all within here, are all positive. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. I wouldn't say so much remarkable, but it's one of those things that I like to look at quite a bit. And each rule applied perfectly. 1 to 3 strokes gained bucket 1s, 1 to 3 strokes gained bucket 2s, 1 to 3 strokes gained bucket 3s, 0 to 2 strokes gained bucket 4s. Well, guess what? We have 0. And 0 to 2 strokes gained bucket 5s, we have 2. I think it was 0 to 2. I'll double check. I think I made a change. Yeah, 0 to 2. So it fits. It falls in line with all of that. So again, that was good. If I do open this up to everybody, you can see kind of, we see a 4 in Brandt Snedeker, another 5 in Camilo, a 1, a couple 3s, a 2. So yeah, I mean, it could have, those golfers were a stroke or 2 away from finishing inside the top 10. So it was close. But yeah, your optimal lineups, we had a strokes gained bucket 5, 1, 1, 1, 3, 2. So it could have been pretty easy to get there. All right, so the last thing I want to cover is looking at all the top 20, basically the golfers with the best stats. I'm going to look at the top 20 of each of the stats that I'm going to go through. We're going to be looking at grass stats first, and then we'll get into the strokes gained stats and some miscellaneous stats. So we look at the top Bermuda golfers. Chase Koepka was the number one guy. Actually, let's hold on. Chase Koepka was your number one Bermuda golfer. I know you guys were thinking that coming into this. Surprisingly, after Friday's round, he obviously made the cut, but he was like 4 under. He could have been in this thing, and obviously Chase Koepka's not like his brother Brooks, but I mean, I don't know if the weekend was too big for him, but he could have made this better. He still made the cut. So if you chose Chase Koepka based off his Bermuda stats, that would have been fine. In fact, when you look at a lot of these guys here at the top 20 for the stat, again, we are sorting overall Bermuda top down, best stat first, or best golfer first in that stat. This is what we're reviewing. So this would be 19, 20 is Kevin Na. It's an even mix. I wouldn't say it's perfect. Actually, we only have one top 10 golfer and one guy that's inside the optimal lineup. Otherwise, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 missed cuts, which to me is pretty average. Like, I'm not going to say Bermuda doesn't matter here. What I will say is it's not really the biggest indicator of success. But the one thing that is true, this stat here, I always go by this. By the way, I sorted this by position if you didn't see that. I always select golfers over 5% top 10 Bermuda percentage. And you can see that very thing happened. If I were to go on the opposite direction and look, here are the only guys that have 0% top 10, how close they were. Most of these guys missed the cut. You have Van Rooyen, Rasmus Højgaard, Danny Willett. Who were some guys? Doug Ghim was a big guy, a golfer that a lot of you guys were talking about, or the industry was talking about. I was not, because obviously this 0%, he's not good on Bermuda, and I said as much in the strategy video. Scrolling down here, Ted Potter Jr. finished 18th, so obviously that was good, 2.17%. But still, when we look at under 5%, there are no top 10s. I mean, we barely get a top 20, but yeah, none. But as soon as we get over that, we do see a 6th place finish, a couple 13ths. There's a 5th place finish. It gets a little bit better. And obviously, we're going to see some of these 0% that finish inside the top 10. But we're never really going to be hurt too much by it, even if they do. Their number will go up a little bit, looking at future events. So obviously, then there will be more of a consideration. But yeah, I usually like to go by this. And then obviously, if we take a look from top down, we have one top 10, a lot of missed cuts, and one withdraw. So that wasn't a really big stat to go by. 2021 Bermuda, looking at top down, that one actually was a little bit better. So your hotter golfers on Bermuda, many more top 10s than there were missed cuts. So good to know there. Looking at your top your top off the tee golfers, top down. So these are your top 20 golfers for off the tee. We see just as many, actually, we see more missed cuts than we do top 10s. We see just as many top 20s as we do missed cuts. So this is one of those even stats. It's definitely not one of those you want to pursue going forward. Approach, way more missed cuts. So if you guys thought this was a ball striker course and you want to select the best ball strikers, there's a little caveat to this. Sure, yeah, I mean, we have our 2nd place guy, our 1st place guy. We have another GPP winner in here on the lineup. But look at all the other guys that you have to choose from. You know, Russell Henley disappointed. I don't know how many were on Ches Reavie. I really wasn't. Emiliano Grillo was actually doing well Thursday's round, and then obviously crapped the bed Friday. Doug Ghim. Actually, let's take a look. Maybe we can find a correlation to Bermuda stats. Not really. Yeah, a lot of these guys were good on Bermuda that missed the cut. Not so much Kelly Craft, but I'm looking at these percentages here. So yeah, approach. If someone were to tell you want to find the best ball strikers, so you're looking off the tee as well as approach, It's not a bad way to get to some of these guys like Keegan Bradley or Sam Burns. But if it got you on Russell Henley or Paul Casey or Corey Connors, they just didn't live up to their value. So it's hard to say. Like, I hate saying find your best ball strikers or this stat has proven successful over the last whatever. I like combining off the tee and putting because as a golfer, you know a lot of those two stats are probably the biggest determinants in success. If you're confident with your driver, you're going to play well. And if you're putting really well, or let's not so much say putting really well, but your putting comes and goes, if you are a top putter, and I won't say that. I'm trying to make some kind of comparison to being a good putter, having some bad days. I'm not really tracking that as much. I just know you want a good mix of all the golfers. And it's good to have negative off the tee with positive putting. It's also good to have positive putting with positive off the tee. So again, I go by the strokes gain buckets. It's much easier to go with that than just to tell you, hey, choose one of these stats, or you want to select golfers that are good in this stat. It's kind of bonkers, kind of stupid. So anyways, moving on, here are your top around the green guys. You can see it didn't really work out all that well there. 2 guys inside the optimal lineup. That's interesting. And your best putters, we do have a winner. So, somebody who was in the top 20 putting in this field to win this tournament, to finish top 10. You also have another one with Louis Oosthuizen, but not that big of a deal. Not that big of a difference to me. One thing I always forget to mention, I like to look at this kind of afterwards just to see those guys that are playing better. Are they... This is weird. This must be off. This is just a comparison of recent form versus baseline. Green stats are good. Red stats are not. But this differential is way off. I have no idea why that's calculated that way. And here's the other thing too. It's a mixed bag. Some of these guys are, heating up on approach, but some of these guys are cooling off. Some of these in the top 10. It's really hard to try to figure out which ones are actually moving forward in a better light than others. So it's really difficult. It's just better just to keep everything kind of mix and match. Driving distance, did that matter? Looking at top down, not really. Driving accuracy, did that matter? No, not at all. One guy inside the top 10, a bunch of miscuts. How about good drive percentage? This is people making good decisions off the tee. One top 10, rest not so good. Bogey avoidance. This was a stat that I included in my my model, and there were more miscuts than there were top 10s and top 20s. So probably not the best stat to look by. Yeah, didn't work out that well. How about birdie or better percentage? Looking top down. That was actually a better contributor to success. Look at all the green that you see. So birdie or better. I definitely thought bogey avoidance would have been more. But we have 4 golfers inside the optimal or in the optimal lineup that are top 20 of this stat in this field. So birdie or better. I wouldn't have thought that. And all the golfers, here, let's go ahead and sort this by position top to bottom. All the golfers over here that are highlighted in color were golfers that were in good groups that I obviously included in the strategy video. So to see color is actually a good sign to me. That means they were kind of propelled forward, and it's good to review this because if it doesn't make any sense, like if it doesn't prove success, we should probably stop talking about it. So it's good to see. I mean, Camilo was in there, JT was up there, Joaquin Niemann, Max Homa, Victor Hovland. Actually, those last 2 guys were the only guys inside the optimal lineup that had a colored score next to their sweet spot rank. Again, that means their whole entire group had the highlight colors over here under game. And again, strategy video will tell you what this means. It just means they're better than field average in either DraftKings points, scoring average, or a combination of the two. So most of these, I mean, the top 6 guys were. 7th guy, Von Taylor, was not, and he was in the optimal lineup. So, can't get too enamored by these stats. I forget to do this, but looking at morning versus afternoon or starting hole versus the other. So you can also tell by game number how many more in the afternoon there were. So there were 52 total groups. So 27 and greater, or 27 and greater, that'd be your afternoon rounds. So if I highlight all of these are your afternoon golfers. So it looks like the PM AM stack was definitely the way to go. We do have some of the AM stack golfers here. So yeah, it definitely favored the PM versus the AM. But I think that's probably it that I have to cover for the Valspar. I actually have some exciting news. I was able to finish probably the more arduous part of my database over this weekend. So I shouldn't even say of my database. You obviously have to put your data onto files that can import into the database. And I was able to get all of the results in all of the data that I want to go with results. So we're talking like FedEx Cup points, official World Golf rankings, their actual result, their total, like what their round by round average is. Not so much average, but their round by round scores. I also put in the match play, wins, losses, ties, or halves, I should say. So a lot of that, and again, I go back to 2013 because that's when the modern PGA Tour season happened, was 2013 and forward. So I went all the way back. There's 47,000 lines of data. And I don't remember exactly how many fields that I have. I didn't count. So I would assume there's somewhere between 15 to 20 of stats that I care about. But that would be basically the bulk of the database. I already have a tournaments page done. So those two will link up together nicely. So I have a results and a tournaments page. I'm about to make a golf course page, which will include all the grass. I'll make sure to include the percentages of what I think the overseed is to the base layer. So obviously, when we get to that moment where a database is created and I can provide you stats, I can say, hey, let's look at Stuart Sink's stats for every golf course that he's played where there's 60% POA and 40% bent grass. There probably won't be many. Let's just be honest. There probably won't be many that will have that kind of designation. But if we have more than a handful, that probably gives us a good idea, to play someone like Stuart Sink or not to play someone like Stuart Sink. And I know that's a weird example, but that is kind of what I'm shooting for. Because obviously this whole season, the more each one of us gets into this, the more data we can consider. Some of these golfers on tour like to engage on Twitter and stuff like that and say, the greens were weird. Like they had some weird 40-60 mix of Bermuda versus POA. And it's like, wow, we didn't think of that. So I want to include that stuff. I think it's going to be extremely interesting. It's definitely going to be a unique product that you're not going to see anywhere else in the industry. I also am going to use some very specific things to my process that I have not seen anywhere. So hopefully I can get this rolling a little bit sooner rather than later. My initial goal was by the Masters. Obviously, we're past the Masters, which was a little disappointing, but I will admit there were things that I did not foresee happening putting this together. So if you guys were waiting, I appreciate your patience. I think either this week or next week, I will be putting the database together with those two tables that I created. And those two tables will make my process just that much faster because I will be able to go by average scores so much quicker. Because right now it's a lot of manual entry. So this will kind of automate it a little bit and it'll be interesting. I do want to include a strokes gain table. I have just this year completed. I think I can go back to 2015 and grab a lot of those stats, but that's going to take a little bit of validation. Yeah, no, there's a lot of stuff that I will be considering into this, and hopefully it'll be moving faster, and hopefully a website will be in the future where I will have exclusive information for you guys, those that want to be members of the website. So yeah, that was exciting. I was extremely happy to get that done yesterday. So definitely things to look forward to. I also cleaned up how I'm going to do the bucket system. So it's, let me actually show you. I should actually have this included. But if we look at the Wells Fargo Championship for next week, got a lot of this information, a lot of this data already finished. So I will be ready to go tomorrow early whenever I get done with work. But so we have last year buckets, last week buckets. Obviously, we're not going to have a last year bucket to choose from, but last week buckets, course history, recent form, and now we're adding in salary and strokes gained buckets. So we'll have the exact same totals that we've seen inside the top 10 over X amount of years, however long I have the data for, the minimums, the maximums, what we project, what their success rate is. So all of those stats will be here. Yeah, I mean, we do have, like, I still have a salaries page that I can go to. So I guess my engagement question for you guys is, do you still want to see this page? Does it not matter to you guys? And if it doesn't matter, I guess put this in the chat. Either you want to see the salaries page, or say put the salaries into the buckets, the summary page. So actually just tell me summary or salaries, and I'll know what you're talking about. But for me, discussing it with you guys will be much easier to grab it from this information. And I've actually changed the buckets up a little bit. So before I was looking at 11, I mean, I can just show you. So before I was looking at 11K and above, 10 to 11, 9 to 10, 8 to 9, 7 to 8, below 7. Well, if you look at this number total, this number continuously gets higher and higher every single year that I add the stats in, because there are just that many more golfers in those salaries. And if I'm being completely honest, as I've been analyzing this, like there aren't that many, I mean, including the 11K guys and the 10K and above, usually there are only 2 11K golfers each tournament. So to have it on its own kind of seems a little silly. You know, what are we doing? We're comparing each year, 2 golfers each year to each other. Like, I don't think that's really all that necessary. I rather look at 10K and above and then split the 6K range. So that's what I have in the summary page right here. It's 6.5 plus, that just means above. 6.5 minus, that means anything below 6.5. It's going to be 65 and over, and this is going to be below 65. So, and also if you have an idea of how to display this information easier for you guys, let me know. And then also for this, I don't know if this is confusing for you guys, but obviously it's off the tee, positive, putting, positive, should be positive off the tee, positive putting, you know. You can kind of follow how that works here. But if you have a better way of doing that, and let's just say in 5 characters or less, I'm all ears. Yeah, I really don't want it to be more than 5 characters. I really want it to be less. It's better to have like 3, but I mean, can't win them all. So anyways, this is the other new addition, and I've included that into the buckets. So this is all automated, you know, going forward. It's just a copy and paste, super simple for me. It'll get me the information I'm looking for much faster. You know, we can just talk about the buckets as I select them. So it'll be super easy to go with that. You can see what the top 5 frequencies are, top 20, you know, average per year, how many will be in there this year, that kind of stuff. It's going to be, it's going to make my life easier, and it'll be easier to talk about as well. So that's what you get to look forward to next week for the Wells Fargo Championship. It's a loaded field, so it's going to be a lot of fun to analyze and try to figure out what the best plays are. But that's all I have for you guys. Thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the preview video tomorrow for the Wells Fargo Championship. All right, bye.